Tatiana, frozen, looked at her father. Right now, she felt as if everything she knew had disappeared into the past. A new picture was formed in front of her, in which events and people took new positions. It was necessary to accept this new one, but it turned out to be difficult. Exhaling, Tanya turned her gaze to her husband. Well, how selfish she is. That's who it really should be hard for. Compared to what she had learned, Bones had received a lot more new information, and it was not so pleasant at all. They met quite by accident. The probability that a modest girl from an ordinary village family and the son of the owners of factories and steamships would meet in a huge city was negligible, but it happened. That day Tanya was in a hurry to the animal shelter where she had been working for the last couple of years. After graduation, she found her vocation in helping the destitute homeless four paws. Her parents accepted the choice, they always supported her in all her endeavors, since she never created problems. And that I was worried about every living being, so is that a bad thing? A person remains a person only when compassion and mercy are present in him, that's what my mother always said. They had a big farm themselves, worked tirelessly from dawn to dawn and never complained about anything. And Tanya didn't stay in the village, she entered the budget department and studied to be a veterinarian. She had no idea how much money her parents had, because she set herself the goal of achieving everything in this life by herself. That skinny puppy was looking around in confusion on a busy highway, not knowing where to run, while the cars were driving around him, but it's not even an hour. Someone will not notice the crumb, and Tanya, without thinking for a second, rushed onto the road. The screech of brakes sounded very close. The driver managed to stop a huge jeep and jumped out to her. What do you think? Why are you throwing yourself under the wheels? And if the speed would be higher, what then? Haven't you thought? Tanya defended herself by pointing at the frightened puppy. Well, she couldn't let this kid disappear. Fortunately for her, the guy who jumped out of the jeep turned out to be understanding. Silently, he lifted the animal's weightless body and gestured at the car. Let's get in, otherwise someone may not have such reliable brakes. We'll get out of there, and then you'll tell me everything. Then Tanya really told him everything. Kostya drove them to the shelter, helped carry the puppy to the doctor's office and hurried to say goodbye, promising to stop by in the evening and find out how the ward was. And he kept his word. By the end of the working day, the familiar jeep was already waiting at the steps. Kostya offered to have a snack and drink coffee, but before that he asked to visit the baby rescued in the morning and bribed Tatiana with this. Experience suggested that a person who cares about the fate of an animal cannot be bad. Kostya really was not only outwardly cute. The guy turned out to have a kind heart and absolutely unsuitable character traits for the son of wealthy parents. There was no arrogance or pride in him, he did not look down on anyone, and he looked after Tanya so beautifully that all her friends and acquaintances had time to envy her. The relationship was moving to a new level, and soon the day came when Tanya realized that it was today that Kostya would offer her his hand and heart. His invitation to the restaurant looked too solemn and his explanation of the reason why they needed to go there was vague. So it turned out, and the girl accepted the offer without hesitation. It's time to get acquainted with Kostya's parents. In absentia, she already knew how difficult future relatives would be. It was not only the groom who warned her about this. The wealthy family in the city was known, and not the most flattering reviews went about the owners of the gas station chain. Employees were offended by salary delays, obvious deception in calculations, staff turnover was constant, but Kostya calmed down as best he could, convinced his beloved that she simply could not help liking his parents. And still the anxiety did not leave, and Tanya anxiously waited for that very day, tried as best she could, choosing an outfit for a dinner party. And so he and Kostya drove up to a posh mansion. The future mother-in-law and father-in-law did not come out to meet them, but at first glance the girl immediately understood. She's not welcome here. The prickly look of Elena Petrovna, Kostya's mother, did not promise anything good. The banter began immediately. Well, hello, come into the dining room. Kostya has delicacies for dinner tonight. I hope your protégé knows how to handle seafood. Tanya blushed from head to toe. Yes, of course, she was from a family of farmers, but both mom and dad were intelligent, educated people and did not need anything. And seafood was rarely on the table just because no one had any special affection for them. During the acquaintance, Tatiana constantly felt Elena Petrovna's gazes on her, as if she was waiting for the girl to slip up. Kostya's father, Roman Ivanovich, was a short, thick-set man who paid no attention to anything. He was only interested in the bottle of whiskey on the table. By the time of dessert and coffee, the situation was completely heated. The future mother-in-law openly reproached her son for choosing such a bride. I remembered some Spatochka, according to her, she would have become a great party of bones, educated from a good family. Tanya couldn't stand it. A cake fork dropped on the table rang loudly. Thank you, it was very tasty, but very nasty. I'm sorry that you judge people by their condition and position in society. Tanya jumped out from behind the table and headed for the exit. Kostya stood up next. Mom, whatever you come up with, we're getting married. Have a nice day. Then Elena Petrovna seemed to calm down and behaved more or less tolerably during all subsequent meetings. Maybe she realized that her son's decision was serious, but for some reason Tanya was sure that such people do not change. And she wasn't wrong. Pretty soon, the mother-in-law demanded a meeting with Tanya's parents. The wedding is coming soon, and they haven't seen each other yet. And in vain the young people were convinced that they did not want any pretentious event, they would just sign up. Elena demanded acquaintance. Mom and Dad arrived a week later. Nobody liked the meeting. Somehow I assumed about her, they did nothing but humiliate the villagers. Elena Petrovna then showed a new bag of a famous brand, then allegedly consulted about jewelry, and then, as if by chance, caught herself. Oh, I completely forgot, you're not in the subject. Well, yes, where can you really understand fashion, you have cows. And only Tanya's dad kept calm. To the surprise of everyone present, he did not fend off the antics of future relatives and only carefully examined the paintings on the walls and statuettes that were everywhere. And he even knocked out the question of what time it was. An antique clock on the wall hung directly opposite the table, but he didn't seem to see them. But, squinting his eyes, he watched Bones's father looking at his wristwatch for the price of an airplane. When the dinner party was over, Tanya was almost in tears, but Dad calmed her down. Daughter, forget about them, I never let you down, so now trust me, live in peace. He did not explain anything else, as Tanya did not pry. A little more than 2 weeks had passed when her parents called and asked to negotiate with Elena Petrovna and Roman Ivanovich. It was necessary to solve the issues of the upcoming event. But, Dad, I told you we don't want any event. And I'm not going to participate in their pompous events again. Daughter, I asked you to trust me. I promise you'll be very surprised soon. It's time to put everything in its place, so just believe it for the last time. Sighing and not understanding anything, Tanya told the groom about everything. On the appointed day, they arrived at the estate of Kostya's parents first. Elena Petrovna shone like a Christmas tree, wearing all the diamonds. She was pleased. Well, now there will be those on whom you can recoup once again. Redneck. But the redneck forced her to open her mouth and shut up for a long time, because Tanya and her parents came to expensive foreign cars and looked as if they had stepped off the Hollywood red carpet. Elegant, tastefully dressed. Tanya didn't remember her parents looking like that at least once. Even Kostya's mother hung for a couple of minutes from what she saw. However, I quickly got ready and immediately started. Oh, I see you rented a car. Well, not my own, of course, but a good attempt. And then everything went tumbling. Tanya's dad calmly greeted her, went into the living room and left on the move. And who told you that the car is not ours? At lunch, the tension was growing. Elena kept trying to prick this Tanya with her parents. It turned out badly, no one reacted, and she was confused. At the end of the meal, Tanya's father finally got up. Well, it's time to get everything back on track. Elena Petrovna, you have no idea how unlucky you were on the day when Kostya met our daughter. And then everything he talked about happened in utter silence. He had a friend in his youth, a real, bosom friend. Together they went to kindergarten, and to school. There were only different universities, but even there the friendship continued. After studying, Tanin's dad chose farming, and Semyon became a good businessman. Construction firms proved to be in demand, and prosperity and confidence in the future soon came. Friends found their halves and often met now with families. And then trouble happened. At a sharp turn of the road, the car skidded, and Semyon and his wife flew off a steep cliff, died on the spot. Fortunately, their daughter stayed at home with the nanny at that moment. The police have not been able to determine the cause of the accident. The examination did not give anything, because the car was smashed to pieces. A couple of days have passed since the funeral, but nothing was found in the house of the deceased friend. All the money from the safe, jewelry, art objects disappeared. It was as if the servants had disappeared into thin air. They didn't pay attention to it then. The baby was going to be sent to an orphanage, but a friend did not give it. We consulted with my wife and decided to adopt. Tanya gasped. She is alone with her parents, which means... Yes, daughter, I'm talking about you now. I never thought that I would have to stir up the past, but something has changed. Those were troubled times, everything could be solved if there was money. And even now, little has changed, right, Elena Petrovna? She choked on her coffee and turned pale. I see you are beginning to understand, and yet I will continue. The cook and the gardener conspired and took everything out of the house. As a servant, it was easy for them to spy on the cipher from the safe with money. Semyon never trusted banks, so the amount there was solid, and you knew about it. Greed has ruined you. Here you are, Roman, why did you take the owner's watch? Kostya's father had been sitting glued for a long time and was afraid to move. Well, yes, who would have thought that fate would present such a surprise? After all, I gave that watch to Semyon. There's a name engraving on the back, isn't there? And why did they take the paintings and figurines? Be silent, I'll tell you myself. You couldn't have thought that these are the originals of famous masters. A special register is kept for such art objects, so it will not be difficult to prove everything. After thinking for a minute, Tanya's father continued, you were smart enough to sell everything you could, but you decided to keep it for yourself. You even made new documents for yourself, covering your tracks. Then it was easy at all, especially having money. Therefore, the police could not find traces of the servants, who miraculously disappeared without requiring payment. During our last meeting, I did a little investigation. The papers also lay on the table in a neat pile. This is a genetic examination proving that Tanya, Semyon's daughter. This is an extract from the Register of Values. It's an adoption. He took out the documents, and with each new sheet the bones on his parents became paler. Elena suddenly aged and looked haggard, and Roman kept prolonging his elite whiskey. You have 24 hours to get out of this house and the children's lives. Tanya is the only heiress of my friend, it's all hers now. No, of course you can try to sue me, but I think you are smart enough to understand the consequences. There was a lot of noise and controversy, but even more surprise and shock. Now Tatiana had no idea what to do. The information that had fallen on her was too much to sort out right off the bat. Tanya, I'm sorry that this way you had to find out the truth, but you had to put these upstarts in their place. Mom and I will understand if you're offended. Dad, Tanya interrupted him, that's all I have. Everything you've told me doesn't change my attitude towards you in any way, rather the opposite. You are still my closest and dearest people. I am very grateful to you for the fact that then, many years ago, you did not allow me to be taken to an orphanage, took care of me, loved me like a native child. That day completely changed my life. Bones had the hardest time, and although the guy never had any special feelings for his parents, it was not easy to find out what they really were. Fortunately, they were smart enough not to resist and disappear from the horizon. Bones and she did not sign, but, despite the fallen wealth, they arranged a modest party for relatives and closest friends. Kostya joked that now he should doubt whether he is equal to his wife, because she is now a wealthy lady, and he is almost an orphan without a penny to his soul. Although he said it jokingly, knowing full well that he has the kindest and most sincere girl in the world in his wives. So we can only thank fate for bringing them together on that distant memorable day.